here to hear from renowned experts, visionaries, and change makers who are leading restoration efforts worldwide. And together, we will explore best practices, success stories, policies, and partnerships that can help heal our planet. The session will be chaired by Dr. Vibha Dhawan, Director General TERI. May I request Dr. Dhawan to kindly come to the stage. As we set the stage, may I request the AV team to play a short video of the session.
Nature, oceans, and ecosystems are the very foundation of life on Earth. But today, these vital systems are under unprecedented pressure from human activity. Forests, wetlands, and oceans regulate our climate, sustain biodiversity, and provide critical services like carbon sequestration. Yet they are being degraded at alarming rates. According to IPBES, natural ecosystems have declined by 47%. Over 3/4 of terrestrial and 2/3 of marine environments are significantly altered, threatening biodiversity and livelihoods alike. Habitat loss, overfishing, plastic pollution, climate change, and urbanization are pushing our life support systems to the brink. 35% of global fish stocks are overexploited, imperiling marine ecosystems and livelihoods. But there is hope. Nature-based solutions like mangrove restoration not only protect coastlines, but also sequester carbon, offering dual benefits for people and the planet. The UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration highlights the immense potential of restoring just 15% of degraded lands, enough to avert 60% of species extinctions. This session will bring together experts to discuss how we can address these challenges, share best practices, and advance policies, partnerships, and community-led solutions for global restoration efforts. We will explore critical questions. How can nature-based solutions address climate change? What actions can halt ecosystem degradation? And how can international collaboration drive large-scale restoration? Together, let's heal nature, oceans, and ecosystems. By acting now, we can adapt to climate change while restoring balance to our planet and secure a sustainable future for generations to come. Join us on this journey to heal and restore the natural world. The time to act is now.
Thank you. We have a fantastic line of speakers for this session. It is my privilege to introduce our esteemed panelist, Dr. Pema Gyamtsho, Director General, the International Center for Integrated Mountain Development. Please welcome our speakers with a round of applause. Professor Petteri, Taalas, Director General, the Finnish Meteorological Institute. Her Excellency Ms. May-Elin Stener, Ambassador of Norway to India, Royal Norwegian Embassy in India, New Delhi.
Yes, yeah.
Dr. Nisha Bakker, Director of Partnerships, the Ocean Cleanup.
Nice to meet you.
Good morning, how are you?
You know Karishma, she coordinates the foundation. Better half.
Dr. Dindo Campilan, Regional Director for Asia and Hub Director for Oceania International Union for Conservation of Nature. Mr. Ranjit Barthakur, Founder Forester, Balipara Foundation. Ms. Suruchi Bhadwal, Senior Fellow and Director, TERI.
Look back.
And the session's chair, Dr. Vibha Dhawan, Director General, TERI.
Namaste. Namaste, Pema. We finally meet. How do you do?
Namaste.
Hi there. Namaste.
How are you?
How do you do? Namaste ji, Suruchi.
Thank you, speakers. Now may I request Dr. Dhawan to start the session with her remarks.
Thank you so much and good morning again. What a
felt my
day. We
paper
started
with
with
charisma.
self-feeding of ourselves, that what's the best way to face the world or to be very strong that the world will remain the way it is and we are the ones who have to change it. And coming to the healing of oceans, ecosystems, marine environment and so on. Protecting nature, ocean and ecosystem. So that becomes very crucial. Now we all say nature is the foundation of our existence and it has its self-healing properties. But what is happening today because of over-exploitation, we are not giving time to nature to heal itself. It's being over-exploited and it's humans perhaps more than any other animal or plant which is putting that pressure. And according to the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, natural ecosystems have declined by nearly 50%, with vast portions of our terrestrial and marine environment significantly degraded. Forests are disappearing, oceans are warming, they are getting polluted with plastic, and biodiversity is vanishing at an alarming rate. The crisis is multifaceted. Overfishing is pushing marine species towards collapse. Plastic pollution is suffocating our oceans and perhaps us as well because we end up eating fish, which we are predicting by 2050, half the fish meat will be plastic. And deforestation is accelerating climate change. And if the current trends continue, the future of our planet and the future of humanity is at stake. But there is still time to change. And that's what we are here to discuss today. Nature-based solutions, they do offer a powerful way forward. Restoring mangroves can protect coastlines from extreme weather while sequestering carbon at the same time. Regenerating forests and wetlands can revive biodiversity and that can enhance resilience against climate change. And the UN Decade of Ecosystem Restoration has shown us that restoring just 15% of degraded land could prevent 60% of the species extinction. These are remarkable numbers and they remind us that solutions already exist. We just need to scale them up. This is not just an environment issue, it's an economic, social, and moral imperative. The choices which we make today will determine the health of our planet for generations to come. So I'm very excited to be with this esteemed panel. Each one brings different expertise, and that is what we require. We need to come out at the end of our discussion today, 4 or 5 points how to proceed. What will be the best way? Of course, I'll also say it's not that easy to find the answers, because if it was that easy, we would have perhaps found it long back, but let's try to make it a beginning. Now, maybe I'll start with you, Suruchi. We are talking of that nature-based solutions, they do exist. And they can be scaled globally to address climate change while ensuring the protection of vulnerable ecosystems and communities. So what do you think? What is it? Where are the gaps? And do you really believe that the solutions are there and it's only, there are few gaps that needs to be taken care of?
We're just checking the
Mic.
Yeah, otherwise
Yeah,
just
I
give
think
mine.
it's working.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, so yes, we do realize that natural systems are being affected because of various reasons, including climate change, and we do need different solutions to be able to help address the problems that we face today. And nature-based solutions are being talked about widely with regards to what can be done with regards to basically addressing some of these concerns that we face today. Nature-based solutions, according to me, are targeted solutions that can help restore vulnerable areas and people who are likely to get affected because of the concerns that we are basically discussing, thereby helping in securing food and livelihoods and providing opportunities to many who are basically affected because of impacts on nature. There are millions of people who are affected in various ways because of these impacts, and the numbers, when we basically take a dig at it, basically indicate that there are nearly 680 million people who are affected worldwide who are living in low coastal areas, and this number is likely to increase by 2050 to 1 billion. So the challenge and the scale at which we are talking about that solutions are needed are actually quite massive, and therefore they need to basically be focused on and scaled up in a way that we can address the concerns of those millions and billions of people who are out there who are going to get affected. Now, to scale up nature-based solutions, I do think you need an aggregated approach to address the issue, which basically seeks to look at how these solutions can be brought together in an ecosystem perspective, and whereby you look at multiple solutions, nature-based solutions that can be implemented to bring about large-scale change that can then basically have a positive impact on communities. So we are talking about ecosystem-based adaptation and approaches and multiple nature-based solutions within the ecosystem perspective that can be looked at to scale up the impacts that are needed with the interventions that we are basically talking about. And to enable the implementation of these solutions that we are talking about, we do require a mixed approach. This includes focusing on science, so R&D is equally important with regards to what we would like to do, and identifying the species that you may want to basically introduce in a particular location, maintaining the diversity of that particular location with regards to species growth, and other interventions that are being thought through, but also focusing on the inclusivity aspect, where you're looking at the engagement of different stakeholders who matter when you're implementing these different solutions. So the role of communities in the process becomes equally important when you're talking about taking forward interventions at the local level. Besides creating enabling environments to the right support that can be provided from policies and programs that can be implemented, but also looking at other modes where you're incentivizing communities and businesses, so market-based mechanisms and payment for ecosystem services that can then help support the implementation that is being thought through. So I think a mixed bag of approaches all the way from science to policy to community to market mechanisms that can help enable the desired results of scaling up that we would be interested in.
Thank you. Thank you, Suruchi. And taking this further, I'll come to Ranjit. And Ranjit is founder of Balipara Foundation, and they have done extremely good work with the indigenous communities and knowledge, and have many community-led initiatives. And I'm really impressed because he always talks about economic valuation of biodiversity, because most of us don't talk about that subject. It's only for us, it's the nature, and we look at forests largely as air purifier systems that they give us oxygen, and never look at from that point of view. And the work which he has done with indigenous communities is remarkable. So Ranjit, if you can highlight what are your expectations and the challenges in meeting that goal, or even popularizing indigenous knowledge and have more of community-led initiatives?
I think, hi everybody, and thank you, TERI, for having us here and actually crediting us with much more than we do. So thank you, Vibha, always for motivating us. I think we celebrated 25 years of TERI last year. When TERI was formed, it was an organization where most young people, I think I was younger then, I wasn't young, but we all looked up to TERI for solutions, and we looked up to TERI to give us a direction. And I think Vibha has been able to redirect with her very expert team, TERI, into that same sort of direction of giving us solutions. I think the world is in a complex place, and very often, just by the subjects that we write, I think I sometimes wonder, with no disrespect to ourselves or to TERI, which I'm very much actually an official advisor to Vibha and the team, is that actually do we have the right subject when we look at nature-based solutions? Everything is nature-based solutions. The very seat that you're sitting on, this instrument, what I'm talking on, is all nature. So actually the world lives on nature-based solutions. So it is very erroneous to actually say that should we have nature-based solutions to carry the world on. What really is happening in the world, ever since Bretton Woods, which is post-war, I think just before war actually, I think what happened is the entire American, European, fast-forward nations actually changed the definition of how the world should be. They put an economic value for everything, and that economic value was GDP. But GDP wasn't green development product, it was actually the gross development product. So that shifted away from all this nature-based solutions that you're sitting on and talking about towards actually a solution of value creation. Nature got a value by actually the stock markets. So really what happened, there was a evolution in the process. I'm belaboring a point just to come to the point that we were made on valuation. If you look at it till 1700, all of us, including the nations which are so-called developed, till 1700 were agriculture nations. All of us built our lives on basically trading or bartering systems. From 1700, the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, R.L. Stephenson, he came with a very great invention called the steam engine. And that steam engine actually helped you to move product and services faster. What the steam engine did, not only did it give transportation, but it helped all mechanical processes in the industrial world to make things better, brighter, faster, cheaper. That better, brighter, faster, cheaper became the Industrial Revolution of how do you create natural products into something which is better for more profit and therefore more value. That went on to what we call in modern time the technological revolution. So what is the technological revolution? The technology revolution is nothing short of computing. So the entire computer IT revolution is part of the post-industrial revolution, which helped industry to make things even better, brighter, faster, cheaper. Today we are in the cusp of machine learning and AI. AI is the common word. AI everybody talks about. Till 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it was computing and saying, do you have an IBM, or do you have Microsoft, or what do you have, or do you have a mobile phone? Incidentally, I launched the first mobile phone in India, so I have some idea of technological movement and the entire process of how the world developed, while I had an interest in nature right through. So we then came into the situation where all these natural products that we value goes either into a stock market or a valuation which companies garner or countries garner. Excuse me. So I think really what happened is industrial revolution, technological revolution, agriculture, industry, technology, and now what we call the entire revolution of digitization. We are at that level. Now it's for all of us to actually wonder what should we do. I believe that the world is actually brighter. I think with AI and other measurement devices like that, it is possible to have more productivity than we had in the better, brighter, faster theory of both energy and of technology. And therefore, we will be able to save resources. Coming and touching on two other very important points, there are just 5 finite definitions for valuation: land, energy, waste, water, air, and carbon. We call it VVAC in our book called Naturenomics. What is naturenomics? It's nothing but the entire valuation and total of what is nature, the interdependence with economics, and whether nature is providing more and economics is taking away less, and vice versa. So naturenomics creates that equation of value depletion. Whether the world is actually going through the carbon revolution or whether it's going through the entire climate change, meaning our President of America has challenged it. And there's nobody telling him. He can say what he wants. He's a law unto himself. And he said, we are totally drill, baby, drill, is what he said in his first day. That means oil is back, carbon is good. So who says it's bad now? Now who's saying that actually we should do anything on climate change? He said there's nothing called climate change, it's Anthropocene. Climates have changed in the world from ice age to this age. So he's questioning all of this. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. So the reality, however, what he hasn't questioned is, are we expending more natural resources than we are doing? It's like a bank balance and assets. Let us assume nature is an asset based off land, energy, wastewater, air, and carbon. Then are we spending more? We are. At the beginning of the 19th century, we were 2.5 billion people. Today, we are roughly 8 billion people. The world is projected to start tapering at about 9.5 billion, and then the populations will drop or remain steady. So till 9 billion people, imagine in 1900, there were 100 tons of tuna. I'm just saying 100 tons of tuna. So all these people who were 2.5 billion ate 1 billion tons of tuna. Today, there are 8 billion people chasing that same 1 billion tons of tuna because tuna did not increase because of consumption. So the oceans started getting impacted. People say, what do you do with oceans? Food, and the moment you go from land to oceans, you're talking about 2/3 of Earth's space. 2/3 of Earth's space is actually water. And that water has enough natural resources. People, just now I was asked a question, but we are only talking about polluting the earth. What about polluting water? I said, it's very simple. We are already polluting the ocean. The largest carbon transportation is actually shipping. You just need to check your Google and find out which is the largest polluting transportation method. It's nothing but shipping. Is there a value to it? No. So the oceans are being challenged by depletion of its resources as assets, and therefore we've got a problem. So if you talk about it in financial terms, which is a good way to do it, is that you see that the natural asset pool of 8.5 billion people is less than the natural asset pool of 2.5 billion. Whether it's Trump or whether it's whoever, it doesn't really matter. The point is that we have depleted our fixed deposits. The moment you continue to deplete your fixed deposits, we have a problem. And that impact can be described as, some people say climate change, some people say that it's waste, some people say it's water depletion. All these are impacts that there is. So my appeal, come to the Eastern Himalayas, come to where we are. We've started about 10, 12 projects based on wood. In fact, we had a woodland festival. We were reminded when we were young, when I was young, we had a thing called Woodstock. So we thought Woodstock was a great thing to do. And so we actually got the forest communities last week together in a place, and go into the net and you'll see we had the Woodland Festival, saying that the forest people defend their woodland. And that Woodland Festival reminded me of '69 because it started raining and everybody got wet, but nobody stopped enjoying the tribal music of the woodland and the forest. The forests and biodiversity is the future. The question is, how do you value it? I've got one more example and then I'll stop. We've got 1 billion trees in one area in India called Arunachal. Just in 1/10 of that place, we've got 1 billion trees. Then 1 billion trees, if you ask the value, people will give you a forest value. If you take 1 billion people and actually look at it in Nariman Point in Bombay, which is a valuable asset in the world, you'll see that the value of that Nariman Point is 100 times more, 1 trillion times more than the value of the trees. As long as this imbalance remains, we will continue to deploy and take away our wooden resources. So the only ways to build is your natural asset, your biodiversity base. How many people know that butterflies are valued? What's the value of a butterfly? If there's anybody in this hall who tells me what is the value of one peacock butterfly, one leopard butterfly, meaning the guy will get a Nobel Prize because we don't value it. Yeah. How many people will say that the beautiful flowers in Delhi have a value? Other than when it's sold, what is the value of that? The pollinization, the entire process of birds, the entire process of bees, the entire process of what it gives. So Walmart did a study, lo and behold, and found that 26% of their entire base of revenue would be wiped out if actually there were no bees. Now, we need more studies like that. That's not a value, but it is called value depletion. So talking in financial terms, the value of biodiversity is what we have to do. Partha Dasgupta of Cambridge has done a seminal work on this. I'd urge all of you to read it. And the reason is, these organizations like TERI, when they have a show like this, at the end of it, we must go thinking that we will do one thing out of the learnings that we've had. Very often these shows should not become just talk shows, they should be action shows. And that's the whole purpose of TERI. That's why they've got such wonderful work in the field. Meaning, can they do more? Sure. But the reality is at least they do something. So most of us should understand that we need to actually do much more work in the field, and we must actually put it on the ground. Other than trees, we have a whole lot of elements of community capture of the politics, the socialization of food, etc., which is there. So the only way is just come to the Eastern Himalayas and see it. I see Isimod is here. It's difficult to get Pema to the Eastern Himalayas. It's easier for him to come to Delhi, I presume, but next time I hope he comes to us. We look forward to the guidance from Isimod and people on this table, all esteemed guests. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, TERI. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Ranjit, and that's what, it's rare occasion to find so many esteemed panelists discussing on this topic together. So that is really, I'm very grateful. And now coming to Dr. Dindo Campilan, who is Regional Director for Asia and Hub Director for Oceania in IUCN. We all know about IUCN and the great work which you are doing. Now my question to you will be that we are looking for international collaboration. Everyone in the world, I'll say, they have large hopes from IUCN that this is the way they will be able to bring internationally people together to work for a cause. Now, what do you think that after, of course, I'm not saying you have done great, and it's not that world over we haven't saved ecosystems in the last few years, but the question remains, we could have done better. So what are you finding as the gaps in international collaboration or at the international level? Is it that the financial supports are inadequate? Is it that the countries are not willing to collaborate? Where are the gaps and where are the success stories? So if you can share some of those challenges, that would be great.
Thank you, Doc. Can you hear me from this phone? Yes. Okay, thank you. Well, I'm very honored to build on what Suruchi and Ranjit have just mentioned. But first of all, I'm very honored on behalf of IUCN to be here. I used to live and work here in Delhi, so I'm coming back, but now wearing the hat of IUCN. And TERI having put nature at the center of this event even inspires all the more. So giving back to this forum, we humbly offer also ideas on exactly what you said, Dr. Ravi. I think, yes, finance is an issue, resource an issue, but in IUCN and all of the discussion, I feel the bottom line is our major issue, which we're talking past each other. In other words, we have really developed a common base of understanding what the issue is about, what the solutions are. And so before we talk about raising more money to support actions, I think it's important to start from the very beginning. And let me focus on two things. This week, yesterday, which was in Bangkok, on yet another UN forum on food systems. And they are talking about climate resilient, nature positive food systems. I was talking with CEOs of companies today where they've just redeveloped their targets, their corporate sustainability targets from net zero to nature positive. So maybe, Dr. Vibha, I'd like to start by offering some of our thoughts. How can we help the world understand when we start writing, using, and speaking about nature positive? Together with that, of course, the very first question was raised today on nature-based solutions. Because I think unless we have a common understanding and agreement of what it is, then nature-based solution loses the essence of what it's supposed to be. The session today is about healing nature. I would propose that we extend it to healing and nurturing nature. And it has scientific basis. We have destroyed nature at a much faster rate than it is able to heal itself. So therefore, it is not enough to restore it or to heal it. If you look at scientific evidence, we have until 2030 to fully restore nature. But then, that time, it won't be enough to restore anymore because the rate of destruction is much higher. In other words, we all have to work together, talk about it and act on it, to be able to ensure that the result, the net result, is positive for nature. Let me explain what it is. Right now, the whole world is talking about bending the curve. What is bending the curve? Up to 2030, we must be able to halt, stop further nature and biodiversity loss. But halting it is not enough. From 2030 onwards to 2050, we must be able to bend the curve, and it cannot be done by simply more restoration and simply more conservation. It also needs a change in our lifestyle, in consumption, the way we produce food. That is what this nature positive target means. Now, going back to nature-based solution, well, the topic of this session or this forum is about climate solutions. We know there are many climate solutions. Nature-based solutions, exactly as what Ranjit said, is part of that. But let me point out something. So in 2016, when IUCN started the work and introduced nature-based solution, adopted by 194 countries, and then 2 years ago, it became a multilaterally accepted definition. The UN Environment Assembly has accepted it as a multilaterally accepted definition. Therefore, it is no longer just an academic, technical concept that we love to talk about. Countries, including India, have a commitment to be able to operationalize and implement it. So oftentimes, I think every time I'm invited, I'm asked, what is really nature-based solution? And if it's not NBS, so what is it? Let's remember there's just 3 key elements. Nature-based solution is number 1. It has to be ecosystem-based. It's not a technology. It's based on an ecosystem-based framework. Number 1, it is not just a conservation approach. It has to address a specific societal challenge, maybe climate, maybe food security. So I always distinguish and say, if you're just doing conservation, please, let's not call it NBS. The third one is co-benefit. NBS, no matter what the societal challenge is, must demonstrate benefit on biodiversity and human well-being. So those are just the 3 elements that we talk about. We also must distinguish nature-based solution from the way we use it casually. We say nature-inspired, nature-derived, nature-based solution. I'm looking around the room. If anybody's wearing clothes with floral prints or plants, that's nature-inspired, right? We inspired from nature. Engineering, biomimicry uses that. We study how animals, plants are basically the basic nature. We use that as inspiration for designing aircrafts or vessels. That's nature-inspired. Nature-derived is what we do now. We use water, we use air for renewable energy. That is nature-derived. When does it become nature-based? When we give back to nature. We're not just extracting assets from nature, we make sure it's better off in a better state than before we extract its power. So that's why in IUCN, and going back to your question, Dr. Vibha, among our roles is to becoming a trusted source of knowledge, tools, and standards. So there's one global standard on NBS, which IUCN has been promoting. And the purpose is we must promote and use high integrity NBS that result in impactful outcomes for the environment. And invite you all to join us in better understanding NBS and to differentiate it from what is not. Now, the last one, what do we need to do next? I think the challenge here is nurturing healing nature cannot just be business as usual. It has to be business unusual. What are those three things? Number one is we cannot continue having forest conferences that on the one hand talk about climate and then another one talk about biodiversity. I have to tell you how many meetings have been invited globally where we're in a room of 500 climate scientists, and then the next day I'm invited to a biodiversity meeting and we all talk about biodiversity. Now science, WMO, IPBES, IPCC, it's been established. Climate and biodiversity are two sides of the same coin. That's why we talk about nature-based solutions for climate. In other words, until we reach a common point of convergence, we cannot use nature-based solutions for climate if we keep separating conferences as climate conferences, biodiversity conferences. They are two sides of the same coin. Now on the finance issue, especially because we work now with ADB and the World Bank, I've been always asked how we can have more money to support climate or biodiversity. I think we're asking the wrong question. Because we have evidence there's enough money for now. The question is that money being provided access to those who need it most? And I think the problem here is countries, let's take countries. Countries are more likely to take loans or financing instrument for infrastructure, for gray infrastructure. Countries are less likely to take a $50 million loan from ADB or the World Bank for nature. So part of our challenge is how can we convene, how can we have voices and influence our countries and governments to invest in nature. Our Asia Development Bank initiative now, Nature Solution Finance Hub, has about $2 billion of unutilized investment because countries go to ADB and say, can we use that to build bridges, to build dams, and there's nothing wrong with that. We need those infrastructure, but they are less likely to go to the banks, global multilateral, if it is about restoring ecosystem, it's about mangroves, or it's about forest. And the last one is we need to go beyond our common circles in conservation, which is we cannot preach to the choir. In IUCN, that has been our effort to go beyond just the conservation community. Example, maybe a good example to cite, just not far from here in Bangladesh, we're working with the UN organization, with the UNHCR, the refugee center. And that's in southern Bangladesh, near Cox's Bazar, where you have the nearly 1 million refugees of the Rohingya crisis. Why? What's the relationship biodiversity? The Rohingyas are setting in camps, which happen to be natural habitats and corridors of elephants and wildlife. So every day you have human and wildlife conflict. So it's an example that biodiversity in nature, it's not just something we romanticize, it affects us. We have an initiative now, it's called Sports for Nature. I live in Delhi just at the time when the Commonwealth Games happened. And you might ask, what is the connection between sports and nature? We see the impact of sports on nature when we start building gymnasiums, sports facilities, and after the event of 2 weeks, what happens to all this infrastructure? But we can also use nature, sports, as the champion and the voice of nature. Right now, the initiative is, the International Olympic Committee. Why would IUCN be partnering with the International Olympic Committee or the Asia Football Confederation? That's because we have that connection. Last month, we were at the International Court of Justice. Why is the IUCN the International Court of Justice? Because we have been asked to make an intervention on the legal responsibility of countries to act on climate change. So all of this is to show that we who are convinced about nature and biodiversity, we cannot be talking to each other. We have to go out there and spread the word. Otherwise, we'll just be in our echo chamber. My last point is, of course, to thank India, the government. It's one of the pioneering state members of IUCN. We have an office here, been working. I don't think it's just even doing things for its own benefit. I've always looked at India as being the lighthouse and the champion for international convenings. We have two examples, the Asia Protected Areas Partnership, 17 countries. The government of India to the ministry has been co-chairing that and investing to bring 17 countries together. And just a few months ago at the CBD COP in Cali, we launched a new partnership with India on the International Big Cat Alliance. The government has invested $20 million as initial funding. And that is to bring countries together, whether it's to serve tigers or other big cat species. India has a role, India has the potential, and I think India has to be supported and inspired to lead more. Thank you.
Thank you. So before I move to Dr. Taalas, I just have one question. Do you think the carbon credit scheme is going to help our biodiversity or forest conservation, or that's not really the right way, or it has a lot of potential because it's going to improve? People will start taking care of trees. So what are your comments on this?
Thank you, Dr. Vibha. I mean, I think we could spend a day talking about carbon credits. Not only that, because today it's no longer a carbon credit. People are talking about biodiversity credits. And if anybody of you, you're being convinced to invest in biodiversity credit, maybe the answer is please. That's a total lie, and don't believe that. Carbon credit, of course, has been associated with mitigation and climate. It's very easy, it's tradable, right? We measure GHGs and emissions. But when we talk about carbon credit, it's just one small part of the biodiversity issue, right? Climate is one of those. So yes, we are a supporter of all the work that's been going around carbon, especially we know mangroves, forests, they're a major source of sequestration, but it's not going to be enough, and that's why people talk about biodiversity credits. I think science is still to come up in order for us to bring carbon and biodiversity credit together, but I think this is the forum where we bring the best of expertise from all around us. But let's not put our market and economic interests ahead of what science has given us. And I really go back to what I said now, because I'm asked almost every day, we want to invest in biodiversity credit. It doesn't exist yet.
Ranjit, your comments.
Yeah, I think because valuation is just a subject that is up my sleeve. Can you all hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So I think I completely agree with Dindo. There are three fallacies about any assets. The first is most assets in the world which are tradable are transferable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
One big issue with carbon is not transferable. Secondly, the biggest issue about carbon is that the entire process of generating, measuring, and managing carbon, who gets the benefit? So the benefit of any kind of asset, financial asset, you have to know who are the beneficiaries of it. It cannot be amorphous. Is it the community? Is it the government? Is it the people? Is it the corporation who actually takes it? Third is the entire process of carbon is actually taking a big challenge, and it comes to and kisses upon the point of biodiversity. When you started doing monoculture for biodiversity credit, you further destroyed the world, because you're saying this tree and this forest is a monoculture, but it has more carbon, because then you're driving the whole economy into carbon. So I'd be very cautious about anybody who talks about just carbon as a financial asset, as a tool for this, and I totally agree with you. The new big wave is actually biodiversity credit, but the science and measurement of that is far from it. However, both these are good ways of thinking as to how do you start valuing nature. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And now coming to Professor Taalas.
Where are you based?
He is Director General of the Finnish Meteorological Institute. And my question to you will be that, looking at what is happening, and of course it was predicted also with the IPCC reports, that we are going to face extremes of whether it is temperature, whether it's rainfall, precipitation, and so on. And what is also happening on top of that is the air quality in major cities, including Delhi. They are becoming, I should say, it's no more that it's a livable city, if one can use that strong word. And that's happening with most other cities as well. So what is it that the world should be doing now because really speaking, we are on a corner, many of us, many of the cities and many of the communities, especially like last week, because of the glacier melt, so many of our laborers got trapped in Chemoli, and in a way, it's not a rare incident. Such incidences keep on happening in different parts of the world. So how will you suggest us what we need to do, the urgent action that is required?
Thank you. I will show some slides because I have scientific basis and I want to base my talk on facts. Could you get my slides up, please? So I have been Secretary General of the World Meteorological Organization for the past years, and now I have been 1 year back in Finland, being the Finnish Meteorological Institute, and we were also leading the IPCC work from WMO side together with UNEP. Today I'm leading Met Service, which is having 300 scientists, and those are having also PhD level education, but I don't go to details of that. And we have also measured this increase of carbon dioxide concentration and methane concentration, and so far we haven't seen anything positive happening there, despite of, for example, this COVID lockdown. So steady growth, new records year by year, everywhere in the world. This is one example from the Arctic. And we have seen also warming taking place. We have seen more than 3 degrees warming in Northern Europe so far, and in the high Arctic even more. And our challenge is that we are consuming more and more fossil fuels, and 2/3 of the problem that we are facing is based on our consumption of coal, oil, and natural gas. About 10% is related to these biodiversity issues, especially deforestation of the rainforests, and about 20% is coming from methane, where we have also food production, and also rice paddies are contributing to the methane problem. What we have reached recently, based on WMO statistics, we have exceeded 1.5 degrees for the first time, and during the next decade we expect to be there more on permanent basis. There may be years under 1.5 degrees during the coming 5 years, but soon we will be having this as a permanent stage. And we have stored more than 90% of the excess heat to ocean, and this is giving more energy for tropical storms, and it's enhancing evaporation. And at the moment we have about 10% more humidity in the atmosphere, in the warm atmosphere. There's also more space for water vapor. We have doubled the sea level rise. It used to be about 2 millimeters per year 20 years ago, and recently we have been reaching numbers just under 5 millimeters per year. And this game we have already lost. The melting of glaciers and sea level rise may continue even for the coming thousands of years, unless we create means to remove massive amounts of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. And we have seen globally increase of heat waves. About half of the planet has been facing increase of flooding cases, and about 1/3 of the planet has been facing increase of drought cases so far. And what is fairly striking also for countries like India, all the mountain glaciers are melting, and we expect that by the end of this century we don't have too much of those mass left. We will have, of course, these massive glaciers in Greenland and Antarctica left still. And where we are heading? We are heading towards 2.5 to 3 degrees warming at the moment. We are no more returning back to the colder climate of last century. But if we are able to reach the Paris 2 degrees or even 1.5, then we could seize this negative trend of weather patterns, heat waves, flooding, and drought. And in many parts of the world, the soil is getting drier, which means that we will lose our agricultural capacity, and we will have also negative impacts on ecosystems, and that's the case for both Americas, Mediterranean region, South Africa, Eastern Asia, and also the Pacific area. And water scarcity and the population growth, it's overlaid on this map, and you can see that, especially Africa is a very challenging continent with less precipitation and population growth. And so is the case in Middle East and also partly in this country. World Economic Forum just published its report last month on what are the biggest risks for global economy in 10-year scale and 2-year scale. And in this 10-year scale, weather extremes, they are #1 risk, and biodiversity loss and ecosystem collapse is #2, and then this overall climate change is #3. So the issues that we are talking about, they are also very valid for economic community. And our challenge is to convert our energy systems and energy consumption from fossil-based to climate-friendly ones, nuclear, hydro, and renewables, and that we have to do during the coming couple of decades to be successful in climate mitigation. Perhaps I don't go details. But the good news is that the prices of both solar and wind energy, they have been dropping under the prices of fossil fuels, and also the prices of batteries and electric vehicles are dropping, so we have better means to be successful in climate mitigation. And finally, how to solve this problem? 2/3 of the problem is coming from this consumption of fossil fuels, as I already said. And then we have to tackle this methane problem, and that's coming from tropical soils, cattle, rice paddies, and also oil and gas production. And then we have to stop this deforestation, especially in tropical rainforest areas. And country-wise, the rich countries made commitments in Glasgow to keep us even at this 1.5 degrees warming rate, but the rest of G20 countries didn't do so, and now the ball is very much in the hands of these remaining G20 countries, countries like China, Brazil, Argentina, India, Russia, Saudi Arabia, South Africa, and Indonesia. What happens there with mitigation is going to define whether we are able to reach the Paris 2 degrees or even 1.5 degrees target. And finally, what is the impact of climate change in India? How to motivate you here in India to be more active in climate change? Sea level rise is going to be a threat, long-term threat for many of your coastal areas. Melting of Himalayan glaciers means that you will get less water in your rivers, which is having impacts on food security and human well-being. Warming of the ocean will intensify tropical storms, and we expect to see also growing impact of weather extremes on economy, food security, and even working capacity of mankind. And since the air quality is an issue here, you can solve both air quality challenge and climate change problem at the same time. And from economic perspective, we are talking about carbon tolls, especially in European countries, and that may be putting pressure on fossil-based businesses in the future. That's in a nutshell what I had in mind, and thanks for listening to this intervention. Thank you.
And I must acknowledge that the weather station, we have set up one in Mukteshwar, and we are working with them. And that's giving us very useful data in terms of what is happening on monthly basis or daily basis. So one should get alarmed in the initial stages and not at the stage that it's irreversible damage being done. So collecting that data is very important, and thank you. And also please suggest us that while we are discussing about it and you know the calamities we are facing in India, is there some immediate measures that the country should be taking?
So what I have learned in India by working together with you for the past 25 years is that the science community in India is very well aware of these challenges, but the political level could be more active, and since India is also going to be a major victim of climate change, there should be also own motivation to be more ambitious in climate action. And of course, you are facing this population growth challenge here, and demand of energy and growth of the economy. But it's a question whether that could be carried out in a more climate-friendly manner than so far. And of course, we hope that in India, in the current geopolitical situation, would be also more active at the climate COP meetings and also at the IPCC front, where we are also having some challenges at the moment.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Sorry. You know, I think Finland stands quite up in our minds in terms of inspiration. And I think the two big revolutions that you have been able to create, one is the fish revolution, even within inland fish, you know, your lakes and all. Even your hotels, say like Kalastaya, Torpa, you know, I'm saying where I stayed many times. I'm saying you just walk out of your room and you see fresh fish and the ducks and things like that. And when you drive up to the forestry institutes, you will have moved from actually making just monoculture forests to biodiverse forests, even though the climatic conditions are not tropical. I think, how can you transfer some of that to TERI so that we could actually partner on those two areas to help our progress?
Yeah, so of course, the first speaker this morning was talking about vegetarian diet, and in our case, we can also produce fish from our 188,000 lakes, and that kind of diet could and should be favored much more. And also this forestry is an issue for us, and we have been helping many countries like Bhutan, for example, to do this kind of sustainable forestry business, and that's something that we can offer for the other countries. And globally, of course, the major forestry challenge is lying in the non-renewable tropical forests.
Thank you so much. And now coming to Her Excellency May Stener, we are, first of all, let me thank you. Norway is partner country for this summit, and I should say a great research partner for last so many years. And therefore, international collaboration is something which you are practicing for decades. And really speaking, it has set an example, especially for our country, if not for many other countries. Now, looking at the crisis situation that we are talking about, that the heat, whether we are talking of healing of nature, we are talking of marine pollution, what is it that you feel we could have done better, or we should be doing it in next 1 decade? So I look forward to having your comments on it. And of course, Norway had set standards in terms of the clean city, the clean ports, and so on. So therefore, well, I was talking to the ambassador, former ambassador, and he mentioned to me that the day AQI exceeds 50, everything is closed in Norway. But in our country, the day it's 50, we feel, wow, what a day, it's so clean air. So that is what we would aim for, that how do we bring that level? And what is it through international collaboration one can think of achieving?
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Dhawan, and thank you to TERI. We are really happy as Norway to be a country partner and to be supporting this summit and the great work of TERI generally. Thank you also to all the fellow panelists and everyone who's in the room for taking part in this important discussion. What we are discussing is actually the foundation of our existence. This is to be or not to be. And your question is very broad, Vibha. I could also elaborate a lot, but I was thinking Norway is a maritime nation. We have taken a leading role in marine conservation, also in sustainable ocean governance. So that I would focus mainly on that, at least now at the outset of the discussion. We've had a long journey, and during that journey, we have also made mistakes. It's not been all sunshine and low AQI in Norway either. But we have learned some things, and we have learned some things about how to manage the coastal areas, which are big in Norway. They are, even though we are a very small country, actually as big as the coastal areas here in India. So how to manage better has been at the forefront. In the early 70s, we found oil and gas in Norway. But already when we did that, actually 1969 was the year where we had the first discovery. Already then we realized that petroleum activities could affect fisheries. They could affect marine resources negatively. So how to find the balance? How could we be a major ocean economy at the same time as we were managing our nature in a good way? How could we do that through integrated ocean planning and through a sustainable blue economy? That has not been an easy journey. We have made mistakes, as I said, but we have also learned some things that I think are useful also to take internationally and to discuss here, and also in the bilateral cooperation that we have with India. Actually, the term sustainability, not everyone might know, but it was first used, at least forcefully, by the World Commission on Environment and Development, that was led by our Prime Minister at the time, first female Prime Minister of Norway, Gro Harlem Brundtland. They used sustainability in that report. That was the first time that really became a word that we were discussing. And I also think that shows that this was in 1987. So it's not very long ago that we didn't really even have language to address how do we address the excess consumption, how do we manage the consumption without making too much of a strain on our environment. And that was a groundbreaking report that we are still discussing, and is still the fundament of many things that we are doing. So back to the oceans, and we also see that all over the world, how the oceans are facing all these critical threats of pollutions, how we are not managing well enough, how we are not managing the climate change that has been talked about, overfishing, habitat destruction. We are jeopardizing biodiversity, has also been mentioning here. We are littering too much, and how are we managing this? We have, as Norway, now tried to place the blue economy, the oceans, at the center of our national policies, but also, as you mentioned, Vibha, as the center of our international policies. So this is important for us wherever we go and whatever discussions we are having. Also, when we cooperate with India, we even have a task force on blue economy that that is the framework for our discussions with India in this field. And that was established in 2019 already, so it's ongoing, and we're working on several tracks there. One important focus is the sustainable coastal management, as I mentioned, and marine pollution. And what we are looking at there is, for example, we call it marine spatial plans. And how can we do the planning in the coastal areas so that we enable these areas to manage the coast in a sustainable way? We have now, together with the authorities there, developed marine spatial plans for Puducherry. And within the framework of our ocean dialogue, we are now discussing how can this be expanded also to other states and areas in India. And this is being used in a very good way for coastal planning. This we are actually going to discuss with India. We're going to have a workshop at the UN Oceans Conference in Nice this summer in June, and we're going to show examples of how this has been good work for the communities there. So these are some of the examples that we are doing. We're also working to try and conserve, restore ecosystems in different areas. We're having a project in Andhra Pradesh and on mangroves in Andhra Pradesh and on seagrass in Tamil Nadu. Also then looking at these wetlands restoration. How can that be a prime example of nature-based solutions that will create better buffers against the extreme weathers, storms that are coming in, and how can that protect people at the same time as it is protecting nature. So we call that also oceans accounting. How can we quantify the value of the ecosystem services? How can we use this clean, purified water in a good way also economically, and how is that? Let me just also then mention the Marine Pollution Initiative that we have with India. We are collaborating there on waste management all over India with different stakeholders in different municipalities. How can we monitor the waste, but how can we also see what it is doing to the water with different chemicals? How does this focus on the microplastics? How can we get less of it? We do beach cleanups. We also look at how can we have less non-recyclable plastic waste. And we even actually look at the cement sector or the construction sector, and how to have more sustainable cement. So these are just some examples. There are small steps. But I think also when we are discussing today, this is how we have to go about. Many small steps are needed to get where we need to get. One country, Norway, certainly not being a small country, cannot tackle these challenges alone. We have to do it together with all those small steps. Yes, that is what I would like to say at the outset, Vibha. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and you are absolutely right, and that's what this particular conference is emphasizing on, partnerships. And we don't have to reinvent the wheel. If someone has succeeded, we should try to fine-tune it to our requirements and take it. And thank you very much for a number of initiatives that you have taken in the country, and also with TERI. So thank you, and we would further like to work, because the number of issues you have mentioned, we are very keen, and we are also working in small little way, and let's do through partnership and take it to more and more cities in the country. EC Mod needs no introduction, and so is the Director General of EC Mod. And if we look at Eastern Himalayas, what do you think? What are the challenges? Because it's not just Himalayan range. Really speaking, if we look at how it is going to have impact at the global level, I won't say even the regional level, it is immense. But still, do you think it is getting the kind of emphasis it should have been getting? And are we in the right direction in terms of whether it is melting of glaciers, whether it is biodiversity, whether it's forestry sector, flora, fauna? Are we moving in the right direction, and what international collaboration can essentially do here? And of course, your institute has done remarkable work in the past, so please tell us what has been done and what needs to be done more.
Thank you, Dr. Dhawan. It's an honor to be here among these very distinguished panelists to be speaking about the Eastern Himalayas. Actually, I would like to thank Her Excellency and the government of Norway, and I'm very happy that Norway is also a very mountainous country. And that's why we continue to get support from Norway. Now, as you said, I will not introduce ICIMOD, because ICIMOD is an organization that is dedicated to looking at mountain issues, mountain ecosystems, and looking at how we can support mountain communities. And I'm very happy that His Excellency, the Minister for Environment and Forest of Nepal is here, our host country. We are based in Kathmandu. So I'm sure His Excellency will be talking about you of the plant Sagarmatha Sambat, the Everest dialogue that is going to happen in May. So there we hope that we could highlight the plight of the Himalayas, the Hindu Kush Himalayas. Now, the topic is healing oceans, nature, and mountains. I think we need to see that these are not separate geographical identities. We treat them like that, but they are all connected. You know, if you look up at the mountains, what is happening, we don't need actually even so much data now. We can see with our naked eyes the snows disappearing, the ice pack disappearing. Where do the ice melt, the snow melt, land up? Land up in the ocean, in the sea. You can see a lot of pollutions, you know, plastic waste, solid waste, liquid waste, all drained out into the rivers. Where do they end up? They eventually end up in the oceans. So I think these are very much linked, intricately linked. So to tackle the problem of oceans health, or forest health, or ecosystem health, you also need to look at what is going on up in the mountains. Now, we have heard it over and over again, you know, the glaciers are melting very fast. It's true, it's melting very fast. So what do we do about it? And we keep on continuing to, you know, emit black carbon, which gets deposited on the snow and ice, that accelerates the melting. We keep on pursuing unsustainable levels of mountaineering and tourism. We keep on dumping waste on the top of the mountains. Therefore, the rate of melting is increasing. The threats from glacial lake outbursts is real. It's not something that will happen. It's happening every year now. You know, we often compare ourselves or refer to the Himalayas, the Hindu Kush Himalayas, as the third pole. What is the difference between the Arctic, the Antarctic, and the Hindu Kush Himalayas? We are a peopled pole. We have people living within the vicinity of avalanches and glacial lake, and we are highly vulnerable. And that is the difference. The impact is being felt now. So we need to focus on how we can bring upstream and downstream countries together to address this issue. These are transboundary challenges. These are transboundary issues. So unless we have regional cooperation, we will not be able to address this. I am very happy to also see our Secretary General of SAARC present here. So hopefully that in the coming years, we would be able to bring the region together to address this issue. Now, ICIMOD is, of course, supporting our member countries to do some monitoring work, to do some assessment work, risk assessment. So we are also, you know, in the Eastern Himalayas, Nepal or Bhutan, the Himalayan countries, we are facing the dilemma of whether or to invest or not to invest in hydropower, for example. You know, all signs, the evidence shows that hydropower infrastructure development is going to carry a huge risk. But then what other economic options are there? On the other hand, we have to invest in hydropower. So what kind of answers do we come up with? So these are challenges that we need to face. So we are also trying to see how we can influence governments to come up with policies that are more mountain friendly, policies that can reduce dumping of waste and putting pressure on the mountain ecosystem. One of the most important things that we need to do in the Eastern Himalayas to address the issue of either too much water or too little water. Now we are experiencing flash floods, we are experiencing landslides, and this is not just because of climate change. It is also because we are just bulldozing roads everywhere. And you look at these southern slopes of the Himalayas, the topography is so steep. You disturb the permafrost in the high mountains. When the permafrost thaws, the whole slope comes down, as it is the case in Chomoli, you know, that's the case with the Chomoli disaster. So we need to be also more aware of proper planning, proper construction of infrastructures, particularly roads. and we also cut off the aquifers. So drying of water sources is again an equally important challenge. Most of the springs in the Himalayas are drying up or on the way to being, sort of getting dried up. So we are looking at how we can revive these springs. We are working with the governments, with partners in the institutions, through a combination of geological and hydrological studies to recharge the aquifers and bring back these springs to life. So we need to give much more attention to the wetlands, the lakes, the marshy areas, because very often even our government agencies think that swampy areas, swamps are just wastelands. What we do, we just drain them out and construct building or convert them to agriculture. And we have to give much more attention to the protection of these wetlands, of these water sources. Now looking at the parks and protected areas, if you look at the Himalayas, there are many parks and protected areas, even in the highlands, but there's very little management there. And now these high altitude rangelands, as we call it, protected areas as we may like to call them, are actually very important repository of biodiversity. Some iconic species of plants, animals are all there. And it's also important for carbon capture, carbon storage. It's also important for watershed, but we are not giving any attention to that. So we are also looking at how we can manage these rangelands, these high altitude pastures for conservation and for supporting livelihoods and so on. So we are working on this number of areas that are important for the health of the ecosystem. But at the end of the day, I think I was listening to Sister Shivani this morning, very engaging, the wisdom that she shared. At the end of the day, nature is like us. It needs peace. We should not disturb it unnecessarily. It needs rest. It needs treatment, and it needs care. So if we give this to nature, nature has its own way of healing. So and I was reading some of the Prime Minister, His Excellency Prime Minister Modi's speech, and one of the quotes he used is to work towards zero defect and zero effect. Zero defect in production and zero effect on the environment. And I think that is something that we need to move. So going forward, we need more regional cooperation, more partnerships, more investments, and most importantly, we need to be more serious about implementation, because we use a lot of excuses: no information, lack of data, lack of cooperation, lack of investment. All that, I think, excuses should be put behind now. It's time to act, and we have to act now. Thank you very much.
In fact, you have made number of points, right, from that we have to take care of our wetlands and mountains. And we also have to take care of what is the carrying capacity of a particular area, because what is happening, especially in mountains in India, is all of us want to have a holiday home over there. And the peaceful states, which were once upon a time, they have become so crowded that one is sure disasters are going to happen. Sooner or later, they are going to happen, and on the name of modernization, the kind of urbanization we are proceeding with, that is way to disaster, not to success. So we really have to have good policies. Yeah, quick comment. You want to make a comment?
Yeah, I do. I don't know. Yeah. Yes, I think we in this forum must take a resolution to strengthen ICIMOD. You see, I think ICIMOD was created many years ago, and I am aware of all the people that were involved. Never before have we had a leader in terms of a peaceful country, a political country actually, they have politics, in the form of Pema. We must be able to have 5 action points, and all of us must take responsibility with him to implement it. Let us take, just say, aquifer. Let us say for Arunachal and Assam. We NGOs, say TERI and ourselves to the Guwahati University, must sign a contract with ICIMOD to say that we will get this done. See, otherwise we will talk, all these are good intentions. But what can Pema do alone? Because these are multilateral, bilateral issues, they always bring politics, excuses. We in TERI in this forum, and it will go down in the history, If in this forum we take a resolution sitting with him, what are the 10 things you want to do? Let us assign responsibility to Northeast, Bhutan, Bangladesh, Nepal, one item. Let us take a lead, because otherwise it will just remain a talk. Look at the appeal he's making and look at the very concrete steps he's doing. Like, he can't ban tourism, right? We know that. But what he can definitely do is the stuff on the ground, like waste management, mountaineering. We have to help him. I think in this panel, and the countries that are so cooperative, Norway, Sweden, Finland, Manila, meaning IUCN, if we don't support him, who will support him? So I propose that we, Balipara Foundation, makes a resolution along with TERI being the signatory, to say that these are the 10 things we will work out to do, and we will have a mechanism by which we'll measure it starting from 1st April. Thank you.
Sure, thank you, Ranjit. And since we have MOU with Guwahati University, so we have one of the good universities working with us, and we will implement it. So we'll take it forward. So thank you. And coming to the last, but I'll say important topic that we are going to discuss with Nisha. That is, and she is heading the, let me just look at the name of the institute. She's Director of Partnerships at the Ocean Cleanup. And for quite some time, we are now discussing about the marine pollution. And therefore, as an institute head, I'm sure you have a lot of responsibility, not only guiding your own institute, but at global level, what should we be doing? Because we only talk, or there is a lot of talk about the pollution. There are very few action points in isolated way here and there, but still now, at least I'm not aware of, that there is a big plan at international level that we should be doing it. So tell us something about what you are doing and what you will suggest to the world.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me? Okay. I'll just take this one. Yes, so the ocean cleanup is basically in the business of two things. One, cleaning up the ocean, which we call the biggest cleanup in history. It's about cleaning up the plastic from the ocean that has accumulated in the ocean since the 1950s and 1960s. Currently, the estimates are that there is 200 million kilos of plastic floating in the ocean, and that's only the pieces of plastic that we can actually count, because once plastics break down into microplastic, it spreads evenly throughout the ocean, and we can't track it down anymore. So the good thing of the bigger parts of plastic is that they accumulate because of the currents and the gyres. They accumulate in gyres, and we can clean it up. The other part of what we do is trying to stop the plastic getting into the ocean in the first place. That's the bigger systems change that needs to happen. So we're also trying to clean up rivers. We kicked off a big project in Mumbai last year, trying to clean up Mumbai's rivers. That would have not been possible without TERI's help, because all of the research has been facilitated by TERI. But what I really wanted to do, because this is what we are doing, I wanted, especially because I'm the closing of the session, I wanted to share 3 lessons that we have learned from our organization in the past 10 years that we're up and running. The first lesson very much resonates to your question. It's really about rolling up your sleeves and get things done. You really need to get into action mode. It's sometimes, like the past 10 years, we've been very much confronted, but this is too big, you can't do it, it's not doable. It's not doable unless you try, and you have to persevere. You have to learn from your failures, fail fast, try again. I don't think that saying it's not possible and sit back and wait for someone else to take over or worse things to happen is an option. Keep trying and just roll up your sleeve, get things done. The second one, for me, is more important. We very much realize that just cleaning up the ocean is not going to solve the issue. This is all about bigger systems change. And if we really want systems change to take place, we all know that that's usually taking like decades. So what we're basically saying is by rolling up our sleeves, getting things done, we're buying time for systems change to take place as well. These things have to work in parallel. We can't wait until all the policies and all the regulations and everything is in place. Sometimes you just have to start somewhere. The third part resonates to the core theme of this conference, which is the partnerships. We're a tiny nonprofit. We are 200 persons around the globe working in 20 different countries. We're good in technology. We know how to deploy the systems. We know how to bring the data together. We don't have any ambition in setting up an education system or doing lobby and advocacy. There are a lot of other organizations that are super good in that. So what we really have to do, if we want to set up partnerships, you have to take an ecosystem approach. Who are the other players in the ecosystem that have a crucial role in bringing about the system change, and make sure that all of these dots are connected and that everyone does their part. There are too many organizations sometimes fighting for the same space and all doing the same thing. Why don't we just align everything and make sure that we identify the gaps and like, okay, this organization has a core strength in advocacy, this one in education, this one in actually cleaning up, this one in recycling. If we connect the dots, we're very powerful. And last but not least, I actually wrote down a fourth thought just while everyone was talking, because I think that's maybe the most important thing to also emphasize. For all of the problems that we have mentioned today, there is validated solutions in place. Sometimes we also look back and it's like there is so much going on, it's so overwhelming, it's too big, we can't stop it anymore. There is validated, demonstrated solutions in place. Sometimes you just have to start, and if you show that you can tackle one problem, that gives a lot of hope to tackling the next problem thereafter, but we have to keep on trying. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, take your point. If you want to say something, please do that.
I just thought of
Some
an
exports
example
happen to
when
you.
Nisha was speaking that I just wanted to mention, because we have all...
There are no easy answers there.
Can you hear me? Yeah?
The
Okay.
lowest cost way of putting fuel is through this plant, which requires coke.
Can everyone
we have
hear me
to
now?
shift
Yes.
it.
Yes. While Nisha was speaking, I was just thinking of one example, because everyone here is mentioning it has to be business unusual. And I have an example from Norway, because it is actually the Norwegian retailers themselves who started having a levy or a tax on plastic bags, starting from being 180 plastic bags used per Norwegian per year. You know, we all realize that this cannot go on. So they started the tax. In Norway, it's almost unheard of that somebody else than the state coffins can get a tax. But even that was decided by the finance ministry and our authorities, that this levy should go back to a fund created by the Norwegian retailers and being used for environmental issues and to go back to the oceans. So then we have achieved two things. Less plastic bags, because there is a levy on the plastic bags, from 180 to 60 per person in Norway. We are at now, the target is even lower, but we are getting there. And so less plastic is being used. As Nisha was talking about, we have to also look at that. But also it's going into a fund that is being used for environmental purposes. So this fund has now actually cleared 40% of the Norwegian coastline from garbage, from plastic. It's 5,600 tons actually. So it's and they are continuing and using these funds. And why I know about this is because they are also supporting projects here in India, supporting also beach cleaning, as I was mentioning at the outset, and other projects in the same vein. Here, they have some parts of it for that. That is not enough, of course, for this big country, but this is then a fund that is being used for those purposes, at the same time also a bit internationally. And I just think it's such a good example of sort of stopping the consumption and at the same time being able to fight the problem.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We are really running out of time, and therefore I'll request, I hate to do this, but I'm forced to do this, and that is, please, I'm not opening it to all. Whatever questions you have, please give it to us. And I'm sure I'll pass it on to all the panelists, and during lunchtime, you'll have answers to your questions. So may I request you to give, and maybe last word if someone wants to say something important. Otherwise, we will keep you informed. The reporters' reports will be there. And I'll take the liberty of, with all the panelists, that we'll keep this discussion live to develop partnerships and take it forward. And maybe next year, like we always say in COP, that there should be report taking. I'll say in WSDS also, we should have report taking. What happened after this session over here? So we should do something of that sort. So thank you very much to all my panelists, and I look forward to continuous collaboration. Thank you.
I request the AV team to play the video message from Mr. Vidar Helgensen, Executive Secretary, UNESCO Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission. Kindly play the video.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to be able to address the 2025 World Sustainable Development Summit during this plenary session focusing on mainstreaming sustainable development. The Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission is the UN body mandated with supporting the generation and application of ocean science to support policy and decision-making for sustainable development. A healthy, resilient and productive ocean that is sustainably managed is essential for the achievement of all elements of sustainable development. And in order to achieve a sustainably managed ocean, ocean science and ocean knowledge is a fundamental prerequisite. As an example, without increased understanding on the role of the ocean as a climate regulator and in climate adaptation, SDG 13 on climate action will not be met. Another example, without increased knowledge and solutions on the role of the ocean to provide protein and nutrition to billions of people through sustainable aquatic production, SDG 2 on zero hunger will not be met. Without increased research and technology to underpin the development of sustainable offshore renewable energy, SDG 7 on affordable and clean energy will remain elusive. And without increased knowledge and action on sea level rise and the effects of increasingly frequent and intense ocean-related hazards, progress to achieve SDG 11 on sustainable cities and communities will be hindered. The IOC works closely with its 150 member states, with industry partners, with philanthropy, and with the scientific community to generate the fundamental ocean observations and data that underpin generational science and knowledge for climate action and sustainable development. We coordinate scientific working groups generating the most up-to-date knowledge on causes and solutions of climate change, including ocean acidification and deoxygenation, and we work with governments around the world to ensure that this ocean science and knowledge can inform policy and decision-making. As the coordinator of the United Nations Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development, we convene more than 50 global programs and over 500 national and regional projects that are working to contribute to critical knowledge gaps and strengthen the flow of relevant knowledge across the science policy society interface. Ladies and gentlemen, with only 5 years remaining in the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals, I do not need to remind you of the urgency of the situation we're facing. We need significant, coordinated and resourced action across society to achieve the 2030 Agenda and the global ambition for other major environmental threats, including climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. Multilateral cooperation will be key to such action. Admittedly, these are in many ways troubled times for multilateralism. But we have seen recent advances in multilateral policy frameworks for the high seas, for climate, and for biodiversity. These new frameworks ensure that today's ocean governance framework is actually stronger than it has ever been. But these recent achievements will be compromised unless they're followed by action, and action based on knowledge. This is why we need understanding of and investment in science-based decision-making. The entire 2030 Agenda hinges on this. In a few months, in June, the 2025 United Nations Ocean Conference will take place in Nice, France. This is an opportunity for the world to come together to change the tide of ocean deterioration and to act collectively to safeguard the ocean we need for the future we want. When it comes to the ocean, we should act as if our life depends on it, because it does. Thank you.
With that, we come to the end of the session. I thank our respected speaker for this wonderful session and everyone who has joined us for today's session.